Okay, this is going to be a quick little video on editing files from the command line. We're going to be using Linux. The current machine I'm on right now is Linux, and I'm going to log into the CS server so that way all of my commands match your user experience. Okay, so from Linux I open my terminal and I could type SSH, my username. I'm going to use a CS101 account. You can use whatever your student account is. So that's my user, and then the host name. Okay. Alright, so here is the command prompt, and I start out in my home directory, and this is listed out on my command prompt. Current working directory, I'm in my home directory. CD tilde, just to make sure I'm still in my home directory. Okay, let's see what's in here. I've got a few directories, no files, so I'm going to create some files. We learned about the touch command that can create a file. I've got a file called created that's got no extension. I might want to create a file with an extension. Extensions don't guarantee what type of data are in a file, but they can help you identify it. Okay, so especially if you made the file, the extension can be helpful. Okay, so we're going to remove those, created and created.txt. Okay, we're back to where we were. Now I want to be able to edit these files. So all we've done so far is create them. Let's edit one. So we use a terminal editor. This is a text editor called Nano, and this allows us to open or create files. So let's make a file called aboutme.txt. Okay, and as you see, the entire screen changed. I'm no longer at the command line. This window, this terminal view, has been entirely taken over by the program of Nano. All right. So now, as I type things, you see this is just like a text editor, one line at a time. If I press enter, it goes to the next line, just like any other text editor. So here I'm going to add my name, Luke May, and then I'm going to save the file. Now look, right here on this line we have some extra information. It says in this file there are 2 lines, so 1, 2, won't let me go down any further, and it shows me over here what column I'm in. Okay, so this tells you the position of your cursor at any given time. Not very helpful with a small file like this, but imagine I had hundreds of lines here. Now we see I'm on line 39, especially with all white space. I would have no idea what line I'm on. So line 39, this is important when you're programming and you get debug errors that tell you what line the error occurred on. Okay, so you can look at this to determine what line of the file that your error occurred in. Okay, so for now I'm just going to get rid of all of these extra lines, go back to the top, and save this file. Okay, down here we have different shortcuts. Okay, the most important one, there's a couple of them. This caret symbol means the control key. So press Control plus O, and that means write out to the hard disk. Okay, so whatever you're typing in here is in your computer memory right now, and you've not saved it to a file yet. So Control O is just saving the file, write out to disk. Okay, so Control O, and when I press Control O, we see I'm prompted here, file name to write. So when I started the Nano command, I started it with the argument aboutme.txt. So it's just confirming, are you sure this is the name that you want to save this as? And if I change it, it would change to a different name. But this is the name that I want. I press enter, and now it's saved. But I'm still not at the command prompt. So I can hit Control X. We see down here, that little caret sign means control, and X, that means exit. So that's going to leave the program. Control X. And now you see we're back at the command prompt. If I type ls, I can see aboutme.txt. So we're going to look at the cat command. The cat command lets us look and see what's in a file without actually opening it for editing. So Nano will let us open it and see what's in it, but it allows us to edit the file too. The cat command just shows us what's in the file by printing it out to the terminal screen. It prints it out to standard output. Okay, so cat about me. And we see it's just got the one line of text in there. Okay, so when I use the nano command, I can specify a file. This is a relative path. It's relative to my current working directory. If I change directories, cd ... that's going to take me up one directory. We see we're in u1/class. If I type ls, this is where all the class accounts are. All right. So from here, I could still use nano and type a relative path to my home directory, cs10100, that's the user I'm logged in right now as, and slash about me.txt. Okay, so this argument is a path to a file. If the file does not exist, it will be created when you save the file. If it does exist, like this one, we just created it, it opens it up and you can edit it. Alright, so saving the file, Control O. Is this the file name I want? Yes, press enter. Control X, exit the program. Change directory back to my home directory. ls, list out the contents of my directory. So ls lists out the contents of a directory, but cat lists out the contents of a file. So about me. Alright. So the reason it's called cat is it stands for concatenate, and normally it's used to join two files together into the output. So if I have two files, let's make an additional file. This file is very simple. Save the file, exit. I'm going to use cat to see what's inside of it, just to make sure it got saved properly. Yeah, so those are my two lines. So the cat command stands for concatenate, and I can join two files together. So let's join aboutme.txt and hello.txt. So it prints out the contents of them one right after the other. So this was my first file, and this was my second file. So that's why it's called cat. It stands for concatenate, or to join, right? And you could specify any number of files, and it'll join them all as one and print them out to standard output. Okay. So now let's look at another way to create a file with data in it. If we use the echo command, whatever you type as an argument to the echo command, it prints out to standard output. Okay. Let's make this capitalized. Right? So anything I type, it will print out to standard out. It will even do new lines. If I add the -in flag, I can specify a \n, and that will add a new line character to the output. Okay. And you see there wasn't another new line here, so it just printed the command prompt right afterwards. Okay, so I might want to do an extra one. \n. There we go. Alright. So it prints out hello Luke, then a new line character which tells the terminal to start printing back over here. Then how are you? Prints out, and then another new line character which tells the terminal to go back. Okay. So I can use this echo command, and instead of it printing to the terminal to the standard output, I can redirect the standard output to a file instead. So running the echo command by itself prints to standard output. Oops, deleted my quotation mark. Prints to standard output, and by default the standard output prints out to the terminal screen, just like we see here. That's by default. I can change that, and I can redirect the output of this command to a file. Okay, so this is I'm gonna call this echo.output. Okay, I could call this file whatever I want, but this is the output of an echo command, so echo.output is what I chose. Now notice, when I ran this command last time, it printed out to the command line. It's not now. Whatever was printed to the command line last time This time, instead, that output is going directly into this file. So let's look in Nano and see what we have. And sure enough, those are the two lines that I created with echo. Okay, so I'm redirecting output to the file. All right, let's change what the message says. Okay, so now I'm going to echo CS is fun. I don't have any new lines, so I don't need this dash in. Okay, and I'm going to redirect the output to echo.output again, even though echo.output exists. Okay, so I run that. Nothing was printed to my terminal. That's because this output, instead of printing the terminal, is now going into this file. So let's check again with Nano. CS is fun. So notice it overwrote what was already in here. Before we had two other lines. Okay, it overwrote that with just this one line. So that's important to know, that the single greater than symbol here, we're redirecting the output of a command with the single greater than sign that's going to overwrite the file. Okay, what I can do is I can have two greater than symbols, and it's not going to overwrite the file. Instead, it will just add a line to the end of the file. Okay, so let's go back to our about me. Let's see what's in there. We've got a bunch of junk in there. So let's fix that. We're gonna start over, and I'm gonna just start with my name, with May, and I'm going to redirect the output of the echo command to this file about me. Since it's one greater than sign, it's going to overwrite the file. Okay, let's look and see what's inside of the file with the cat command. Okay, so that worked. Now I can add additional information. Okay, what is my email address? Okay, I'm going to echo that. And instead of one greater than sign, I'm going to use two. This is going to allow me to redirect the output of this command. But instead of overwriting the file, it's just going to add to the file. It's going to append to the file. All right. So no output. That makes sense because we redirected the output from standard output to the file. All right. And then we'll examine the file. And now we have two lines. Okay. I'm going to add something else. Echo dash in. We're going to say CS 1100, and then have a new line character and say what course this is for, CS 101, and then maybe add one extra new line character. Okay, so if I want these slash ins to be evaluated as one new line character instead of actually being a backslash and an in, the echo command requires that I add this in option. Okay, so if I print this out by itself, it's going to print to the terminal, and there's the two things that I printed out. Right? Now I want to redirect this standard output to the file about me, but I also just want to add to the file. I don't want to delete the file and overwrite it. Okay? So this should just be added to the file because I have two greater than symbols. So now with the cat command, we can look at about me. And sure enough, it added everything properly. Okay, so that's another way you can create files and add data to files, is with the echo command. For anything more complicated, Nano is probably your best bet. You're going to be doing most of your text editing for programming assignments. You're going to use that Nano for that. Unless you have a text editor that you prefer to use on your local machine, and then you can move the files over from your local machine to the CS server using an FTP client. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the options in Nano and just the command line in general. It's really handy to be able to copy and paste. Okay, copying and pasting depends on the application you're using or the terminal. Okay, so in Windows and Linux, most non-terminal applications you can copy and paste by highlighting something. Right, I can highlight this and hit Control-C to copy, and then Control-V to paste. All right, that's pretty ubiquitous. All right. And then the cut is just copying, but it deletes it after it copies. Okay. So it copies this to what's called a clipboard, and it stores whatever you copy or cut to the clipboard, and then when you paste it, it takes what was on the clipboard and pastes it wherever your cursor is. Alright, so this is very handy. You're going to be using these a lot. Now in the terminals, it's a little bit different. So most Linux terminals, if you want to copy something, instead of Control-C, you have to use Shift-Control-C, because Control-C means something different in the terminal. It usually means to send an interrupt signal or stop a program. Alright, so instead in the terminal we use Control-Shift-C, and that allows me to copy whatever I've highlighted. Alright, and if I want to paste that, Control-Shift-V. So you just add the shift on a Linux terminal to paste. Alright, it's a little bit different in PuTTY. Okay, so PuTTY, the copy and paste is done all with the mouse. So in PuTTY, if you highlight something, as soon as you highlight it, it's automatically copied. And then you can go to your other application and paste it with the normal Control-V, right? If you're in another application, like here I'm in a text editor in my local computer, I hit Control-C, that's the normal way to copy. I copied it with Control-C, that's the Windows or the Linux normal application copy, and I go to the terminal, and to paste it though, I still have to use Shift, so Control-Shift-V, right? And it pastes it in there. So on Nano, or I'm sorry, on PuTTY, you highlight and it copies, and on PuTTY to paste, you just put the cursor wherever you want it, wherever you want to paste, and then right click, and it automatically pastes it in there as soon as you right click. Alright, Mac OS is a little bit different. They have a more unified experience, so Command X is cut, Command C is copy, and Command V is paste, and that works for applications and terminal settings. Okay, Nano has its special own clipboard. You can still copy and paste like we just mentioned. So let me take all of this information on copy and pasting, and I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to open a Nano and call it copy paste.txt. Okay, now I can paste in here the normal way. I'm using the terminal, so I have to use Shift, Control, and then V, and it pastes things in. Now there's a couple things that have happened here. Alright, this does not look like what I copied. That's because of a feature in Nano called auto indent. That's somewhat useful when you're programming, but more often than not it's a pain. So it automatically matches your indentation level when you press enter. Okay. So if I'm coding something and say Python for I in range 5, now when I press enter, it's going to match the indentation level that I was at previously. Okay, so it saves you a couple of tab presses or spaces. Really, it's not worth the advantage because when you copy and paste, it becomes a mess, right? So to turn that feature off, you can press the Alt key and press I. Okay, so now I've pressed Alt I, and when I press enter, my cursor goes back to the beginning. All right, so that's critical. So now let's try this again. I'm going to copy this over here, copy, and paste. Oops. There we go. So now it didn't do that weird thing. Alright, so when you're copying, pasting, make sure you turn off the auto indent. It's very important. Alright, and for Mac users, it's important to get the Alt key to work in your terminal. You have to enable it. So you have to go to your settings in terminal and go to keyboard, and there'll be a little checkbox where you can say, make my Option key on your Mac keyboard. That's going to behave like the Alt key. Alright, so here we have pasted in something from the Windows, the windowed applications in Linux. In Linux or Windows, this is kind of what you would do. You do Control-C to copy, and then within the terminal, Shift-Control-V. Or if you're using PuTTY, you would have just right-clicked, and it would paste in there. If you're using Mac OS terminal, you would just hit Command-V, and it would have pasted. All right. So on top of these copy and paste methods, Nano has its own clipboard that's separate from the operating system's clipboard, and I can do Control K, multiple lines. I can cut multiple lines. If I do it once, it just cuts the one line. Control U will paste it back in, and if I do Control U again, it will keep pasting it. Okay? So Control K, there we go. We go back to where we were. Now, if I want to copy more than one line, I say Control K, Control K, Control K, Control K. I did 4 lines that time, and then Control U will paste all 4 lines back in. Now again, this method is strictly for Nano, okay? So it's a separate clipboard just for the Nano application. All right, so I can save this with Control O and then exit out, Control X. Okay. The other thing with Nano is you might accidentally, if you're not careful with your spaces and your file names, I might want to create a file called hello there.txt. Okay, if I don't put quotes around that, Nano's going to create 2 separate files. Okay, up here at the top, this is the first file, 1 out of 2. So this is the file it created called hello. I can save that. And then to switch to the next file, you can use the Alt key. And again, for macOS users, you're going to have to enable that as your Option key. So press Alt and then arrow right, and you can go to the other file. So this is there.txt. And I can save that. Control O, and then go back to my first file. Save that, and then switch back, Alt, right arrow to go to the other file. So you can open up multiple files in Nano if you want. But if you wanted to make a file name that was actually hello there.txt, you have to escape the space. Oops. Okay, the backslash. Normally in Linux commands, the space designates the difference between the beginning of the command and any arguments. So if it sees a space, that means hello is the first argument, space, and here's the second argument. So the user obviously wants Nano to create 2 files, right? If I want one file and I want this space to be part of the name, I have to add the backslash and tell the command line, wait a minute, the space I'm about to add does not mean I'm going to start a new argument. This is all part of the first argument. Okay. Another way to do that, and we'll open this up real quick and show that it's one file. See, here's the file name, and it's including the space. Save that. And now, the other way you can do it is with quotes. I can say hello there.txt. And because this is in quotes, it knows that the space is part of that first argument. And we see it opens the same file. So that's basic creating and editing files from the command line.